What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Attack of the Poison Outputs, and today we're going to be looking at chain reactions. So, we're now going to look at the last transaction we sent, where we sent 5 different stealth addresses that we had received for the gold. Remember that? We're now going to change the story a little bit. So, again, we're a DCA investor. Every month we buy 10 Monero from our favorite KYC exchange. However, after 5 months, we decided to sell all of our Monero at the same KYC exchange. So we send 40, or not all of it, but most of it. So we send 45 Monero back to this KYC exchange. And the logic here is because you are sending the Monero back to the KYC exchange, that this doesn't have any effect on anonymity. Now, is this right? So the thing is, let's pull up our transaction here. Technically speaking, you're just following the law. You're sending it back to the KYC exchange. You're going to pay your taxes, right? You're going to pay your taxes. The problem, though, is that you are actually hurting the anonymity of everybody else using the Monero network. And the reason for that is because chain analysis, who's colluding with KYC, will be able to, with a high degree of confidence, peg all of your real spends, all of your stealth addresses, all of your pub keys, all of your poison outputs. They're going to be able to look at those and they're going to say, oh, these are the real ones. And if they appear in other ring signatures, they're decoys. And that's what's called a chain reaction. So, for example, we are back in our wallet here. Incoming transfers verbose. Let's just pull up a random poison output. Control F. Boom. We have this one here. What a chain analysis company can now do is they can go to every other ring signature that has this stealth address, and they can remove it. And essentially, you're hurting the privacy of other people using Monero. This is what's called chain reaction, where essentially by figuring out what spend is real, you can then look at the other spends and count them out as decoys. And this is a huge problem with KYC, because KYC acts essentially as a gateway towards Monero, and they are collecting all of this information. So if they know for certain that you're sending back their same outputs, they're going to say, hey, we can take this out of other ring signatures. Now, it gets weirder though, and I'm going to go on a little rant here. I'm going to ramble a little bit. And this might get a little confusing. I have nothing written down, by the way, but I'm just going to go for it. Where this gets weird is that the example I'm showing you now, with you sending Monero back to the KYC exchange, it works, right? It makes sense. However, if we really think about it, we can go back to the previous video where I bought gold, right? And a KYC, or I should say a chain analysis company colluding with KYC, if they see that transaction where I'm buying 45 gold, wouldn't they be able to then look at all of those outputs that or all of those ring members with poison outputs? And they can look at those poison outputs. They can say, those are all co-spends related to Xenu. Therefore, we can now remove those from other ring signatures. Right? Wouldn't that work? Even though, in this case, they're not receiving them back like with the KYC exchange. But in this case, I'm buying, gold from somebody, but a chain analysis company can look at that and they can say, hey, that has to be Xenu, right? Has to be him. Therefore, let's go to all the other ring signatures out there and let's remove those poison outputs, because those other ring signatures are obviously decoys. in this situation where he's buying gold, they're all clustered together. They have to be the same person. And this is where it gets complicated, because how do they actually know it's the same person? Like, how many ring signatures with related poison outputs do you need? What if it's only 3 ring signatures with poison outputs related to the same person? Would that be enough information? What if there's 5 ring signatures and only 3 of them have poison outputs related to the same person? Would that be enough information? What if there's only 2 ring signatures? Do you see where I'm going with this? It's very up in the air as to whether or not this is actually objectively proving if somebody sent Monero or not. And this is a point that Arctic Mind brings up a lot, where it's very hard to prove who sends something. And in actual fact, even in cases with Bitcoin, with their mixers, it's hard to prove who is actually sending something. Now, with Monero, we have these obfuscation layers, and it makes it even harder, but that just makes this all the more troubling. Because, in that video, I'm sure you guys saw it from Chain Analysis. We're going to be going over it later on, but they had a PowerPoint and they were using IP addresses. But in that video, they were talking about co-spends. And this is what I'm going over right now. But how are they actually able to prove that all of those other ring members were decoys? Like, what were they using? Well, like, what algorithm? We don't know. And that's what's troubling about this, because they're not telling us. It's in this hidden black box they have in Aruba or whatever. You know what I mean? They're not actually telling us how they're getting to this information. And that's highly troubling, because if they're just saying, oh, it's right, and everyone says, oh, it's right, then if it goes to court, the jury's going to be like, oh, it's probably right, even though it might not be right. All of this is very confusing. I don't know what's going on. And actually, I actually asked a Monero developer about this, and he said, oh, we'd have to do, like, for example, I asked him, what are the specific probability of, if you have 5 ring signatures with 5 or a poison output in each of those 5 ring signatures, what's the likelihood that that person sent that Monero? And he said, oh, it's a high likelihood, but we'd have to run all these tests. And then he started really going in math jargon, and I got filtered pretty quickly. but the thing is, like, this is not like a cut and dry thing, and you have people reaching these conclusions. Okay? Here's the problem, though. It gets worse, by the way. It gets worse. So let's say we then go back to our previous example where we did the sweep, right? So let's say you have these 5 ring signatures, and you decide to sweep it into one stealth address, right? Remember that? Sweep all, send to yourself. And let's say you sent all 50 Monero back to yourself, and it goes into this stealth address, this 276 AF5. However, then you get the idea, okay, I'm going to now send 45 Monero to the KYC exchange. So you do that. That KYC exchange, who's colluding with the chain analysis company, they're going to look at this and they're going to say, hold on, this guy, he had these 5 ring members, or these 5 ring signatures with a ring member that's a poison output, and he consolidated them clearly into one of these stealth addresses, which is clearly this one, and then he sent us 45 Monero with this stealth address. Therefore, we can go back in time, and we can go to each of these ring signatures and say, hey, those are poison outputs. We can eliminate them from other ring signatures. Am I confusing the hell out of you? I probably am, but that's why this is such a confusing topic. And I frankly don't have an answer for you. Well, actually I do. It's don't use KYC. But the other thing is you have to really have good coin control. And this is something, I'm going to have a video on this later, so don't worry. But you really need to be on top of your game when it comes to this, especially if you have a high threat model. Because all of this stuff is very confusing, and it's very easy to forget that you're giving away information, right? So anyway, that's the video. I hope my rambling wasn't too excessive here. But this is a chain reaction. You have, multiple ring signatures with poison outputs. That's going to get linked to you. And suddenly all of those ring members that are poison outputs, they're going to get removed from other ring signatures. And therefore, you're hurting the anonymity for everybody else. So my recommendation, if you are getting cryptocurrency from a KYC exchange regularly, it's not the end of the world. In fact, maybe it's a good investment strategy. I would regularly churn the entire amount once a month, okay? This is the best way to protect you and to protect everybody else. And do it at random intervals. Don't do it at the same time every day or every month. Just churn it, once a month. It only costs a cent. It helps the anonymity of everybody using Monero, and it'll protect those stealth addresses. Okay? So that's the video. If you learned something, consider donating. And in fact, when you donate, you can even go on the Block Explorer and check what it looks like yourself. I recommend xmrchain.net. Great website. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.